Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So it is day 2 of 13F season, okay? Most of the 13Fs from these super investors were released today. So here's what I want to do. Yesterday, I went through a couple of them. Today, there's so many that I want to narrow it down a little bit, and here's how I'm going to do that. So Mohnish Pabrai has something called a free lunch portfolio. And part of this free lunch portfolio is shamelessly cloning great ideas from these super investors. And Pabrai has a short list of super investors that he clones. And we're going to use that short list to narrow down the picks, the stock picks that we're going to be looking at, okay? So essentially, here they are. These are the super investors that Pabrai clones for the free lunch portfolio. They tend to be concentrated investors, which means they have most of their money in just a few big bets. Okay. So let's take a look at some of these. And there are a few that haven't been released yet. Lilu, I'm eagerly awaiting Lilu's 13F for Himalaya Capital Management, and Sequoia Fund is one more that hasn't been released yet. But these have been released, so let's take a look at what these investors are doing. So Chris Hohn bought Visa in the second quarter of 2020. He increased his position in Visa 52%. And now Visa makes up 9% of his fund. Now there's no Value Investors Club write-up for Visa. But what I did, I decided to do something a little different. I decided to calculate the intrinsic value of Visa using Benjamin Graham's intrinsic value calculation. And let me know in the comments if you want me to go through a video kind of detailing how Benjamin Graham finds the intrinsic value, what that formula is. But using Graham's formula for intrinsic value, I came up with an intrinsic value for Visa of $157 per share. Now, at the beginning of quarter 2 of 2020, Visa was actually a little bit lower than 157. It was in the low 150s, okay? So I think what's happening here with Visa is you've got an obviously great business. Everyone knows Visa is a great business. And it got down to a fair price. So I think that's why we saw Chris Hohn adding to his position in quarter 2. Next, we've got David Tepper. Now, Tepper had 2 positions that where he added a significant amount, and those positions make up more than 10% of his portfolio. So one of them was Alibaba. Alibaba, awesome business. And I imagine it's something similar where, it just got down into his buy range in the early part of the second quarter of 2020. There is a Value Investors Club write-up for Alibaba. I would highly recommend checking that out if you're considering buying Alibaba. I don't personally know that much about Alibaba. I've never researched it. But if you guys want, let me know. I'll do a discounted cash flow valuation on Alibaba to see what I come up with for the value. But clearly that's a big bet from David Tepper. And then another bet from David Tepper in quarter 2 was T-Mobile. Okay, he had a small position in T-Mobile, and now he's got a quite sizable position in T-Mobile, making up 11% of his portfolio. There's a write-up from September 2018. T-Mobile doesn't strike me as a high-quality business, but my sense here is that David Tepper is seeing maybe a hidden moat in T-Mobile, or just a lot of value that can still be unlocked for the company. And it actually points to that kind of argument in this Value Investors Club write-up. So check that out if you're interested in T-Mobile. Bill Ackman. So this is Restaurant Brands International. They own Tim Hortons, they own Burger King, they own Popeyes. I think a number of fast food chains is owned by Restaurant Brands International. He added 67% to his position in the second quarter. It's now, it's a top 2 or top 3 position in Bill Ackman's portfolio. So a pretty high conviction bet. Unfortunately, the latest Value Investors Club write-up is from quite a while ago, almost 3 years ago. It'd be nice to see more of a more recent valuation from Value Investors Club. But a big thing with restaurant brands, and all restaurants, it seems, most restaurants anyway, they took a big dip from their highs in early 2020 down to late March, early April. Restaurant Brands International dropped almost 60%. So I'm guessing, again, this just fell into Bill Ackman's buy zone, and he decided to snap up a little bit more of it. But Restaurant Brands International is well known as a great business. So it's just a matter of getting it at the right price. And based on what we've seen with this pandemic, there's a lot of restaurant companies that have been had recently for a great price. What was it? Jack in the Box was something Michael Burry picked up in the first quarter of 2020. And I was quite surprised looking at a price chart of Jack in the Box. It fell something like 80, I think almost 80%. The price dropped in March. So that was eye-opening. Jeffrey Ubben. Now this was fascinating to me. In the second quarter, Jeffrey Ubben bought Nikola Warrants. Okay. And right now it's currently sitting at a 9% stake in his portfolio. Now it's a little bit less now. The price given in the 13F was like $67 per share. And Nikola is like $45 per share now. But the warrants are pretty interesting. Each warrant allows you to buy common stock at $11.50 per share. And obviously, the stock is much higher than that. It's about 4 times that price right now. So there's a lot of value to be had in owning these warrants. There was actually an article put out by Motley Fool about these Nikola warrants. And I guess Nikola is going to be redeeming the warrants, which is possible so long as the price is above $18 per share for 20 consecutive trading days, and it has achieved that. So essentially, if you own Nikola warrants, you have to redeem them by the end of the day on August 21st, okay, which isn't long from, it's just a week from now, or they're basically worthless. It says it doesn't apply to warrants that are still held by the original investors who received them via private placement in 2018. But clearly that's not Jeffrey Ubben's situation, because they showed up on his latest 13F. So presumably he acquired them in the second quarter of 2020. But it's an interesting story. Jeffrey Ubben buying these warrants. I was quite shocked to see Nikola on the 13F of any of these value investors, but clearly it worked out very well for Jeffrey Ubben. The fact that he can buy these shares of Nikola at $11.50, and then if he wants to, turn right around and sell them at about 4 times that price. So that was a pretty interesting one in this list. Finally, of course, Mohnish Pabrai bought Seritage in the second quarter of 2020. Most of us knew that because he bought more than a 10% stake in the A shares. So he had to disclose that the 10 days following the month that he owned more than 10% of those shares. and that was on June 10th. So, I think he bought most of this in May, probably around $8 per share. Now, currently, we've had a bit of a run-up in Seritage over the last week or so. I think it's approaching $13 per share right now. So assuming Pabrai bought them at around 8, that's already a pretty nice gain from 8 to 13. But it sounds like Pabrai is planning on holding Seritage for 3 to 5 years, and hoping management is able to unlock a lot of the value that's in all of those assets that they own. I think outright they own like 175 properties that used to be Sears or Kmart locations. So, of course, some of those are being redeveloped to higher value real estate like multifamily. So it'll be really interesting to see how Seritage unfolds. There is a write-up from November 2018. There's a lot of discussion about Seritage in the corner of Berkshire and Fairfax. That's a message board. It costs, something like $23 for a lifetime membership to that message board. And there's some really smart investors in there, guys. If you aren't a member to corner of Berkshire and Fairfax, I would highly recommend that. I think probably for all of these stocks, there's, currently dialogue happening about each of them. I know it's not super favorable for a company like Nikola, but I'm sure with some of these other long-time value stocks, like Visa, Alibaba, Restaurant Brands International, I'm sure there's a fairly robust message chain happening for those companies, certainly for Seritage. And of course with Seritage, not only is Pabrai in there, but you've got Guy Spear, you've got Eddie Lampert, you've got Berkshire Hathaway that owns the debt. I think Warren Buffett still owns the stock in his personal portfolio. So there's just a lot, Phil Town, of course. There's a lot of great value investors who have bought up Seritage recently. So, it'll be really interesting to see what that does over the years. And I'm still working on really nailing down my valuation for Seritage. I'm going to be sharing that within the next couple of weeks as I unpack that more. But my sense of Seritage is, it's somewhere between a 5 and a 10x in the next, say, 5 years. So I think that's what Pabrai sees in it. That tends to be the kind of bets that he's looking for, the kind of upside that he needs before he makes a big stake in a company. So again, really interesting to see how that plays out. So these are the top kind of 6 stock purchases that I saw in this 13F season over the last couple of days. Curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on these 6 stocks. And if there's any stocks you think I missed, maybe another super investor bought something that you found interesting. There were a bunch that I didn't cover, obviously, because I really just focused on these super investors that, Pabrai really has a lot of faith in. But I'm sure there are other fantastic investors out there who made acquisitions in the second quarter. So, let me know what those are if you see something that you really like. Of course, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought a gold mining stock, which one of you mentioned in a recent video. And, it's only a $500 million stake, which is only like 0.25% of Berkshire Hathaway's equity portfolio. So it's pretty small, but I really like the way that Buffett did that. So most people, if they wanted to bet on gold, they would just buy gold, right? Buy the commodity, gold. Buffett doesn't like buying commodities because they aren't asset generating. They don't spin off cash like a business does. So what Buffett did, he decided, well, I'll buy a gold mining company that, has claims to all of this gold and copper. This is a gold and copper mining company. So he has the gold, right, in a sense, but he also has the business that's mining the gold. So I thought that was interesting. And, I may do a deep dive on gold, the company. We'll have to see, if there's any interest from you guys, or, I've never really gotten into mining stocks before, so it'd be kind of a new area for me, but maybe it'll happen. We'll see. All right, guys, I just wanted to share this kind of 6 stocks from 13F season that I'm really caught my eye. These are very interesting buys from these 6 fantastic value investors. So if Lilu or Sequoia have any updates tomorrow, maybe I'll give a shout out to them. Otherwise, I'll just cover my usual top 10 stocks on Robinhood for the last week. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Take care.